I want to welcome everybody. My name is Deborah Jerome. I'm with the ECG Group in the marketing department, and I'm happy to welcome our co-hosts for this Energy Performance Contracts, a fast track for COVID relief spending. I would like to introduce Vaughn Banks, who is here with the ECG Group. He is National Director of Development, and you'll see that he has more than 20 years experience in construction and development. He has served as Deputy Assistant Secretary for the United States Department of Housing and Urban Development, and as such, he is recognized as a HUD expert. We're, of course, happy to have him on the team here at ECG. And his co-host today is Danielle Floyd, who is the General Manager of Transportation Services at the School District of Philadelphia. But Danielle, as you can see, has a long history, more than 15 years of leadership at the Philadelphia School District, including roles such as Chief Operating Officer, Director of Capital Programs, and Deputy Chief of Staff, and she is then our partner in an EPC project that she will speak about a little bit later on. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Otto and Danielle to get into the presentation.
All right, thank you. Welcome, everyone. Good morning to some of you, and of course, good afternoon to others. Again, as you know, I was introduced, Otto Banks. I'm the National Director of Development. We pulled up this slide here to introduce you to our executive leadership team. We have Kendra McQuilton, of course, who's our Chief Executive Officer, Larry, who's our Chief Operating Officer, Dave Newman, Vice President of Engineering, and of course, Justin, who's our project engineer. And I, of course, will be remiss if I did not once again recognize Danielle Floyd from the Philadelphia School District, who, let me tell you, ladies and gentlemen, with the information that she has to share with you is going to blow you away. She's just such an incredible asset, and I'm so honored to have her participate and serve as co-host for today's presentation. Today on our agenda, we're going to walk through 6 different items, of course. The first being energy performance contracting, EPCs. What actually is it? When I attended the CAPSI conference earlier this year, you know, I spoke and asked the entire group. There was like 250 people in the room, and I asked, how many of you have heard of an EPC or energy performance contract? In the entire room, only 3 people raised their hand, and at that moment, I knew that this webinar was essential. So of course, I'm going to explain to you what an EPC is, why do school districts need EPCs, how to execute an EPC easily for your district, examples of successful projects, and how an EPC can maximize ESSER funding, and of course, Q&A and next steps. So, energy performance contracts. Energy performance contracts provides, it's a way that you can fund large facility improvement projects at no out-of-pocket cost or budget impact, and of course, there's no risk. We refer at ECG Engineering to our services as energy performance engineering, where we guarantee that money now being wasted on energy will pay for all project expenses, including construction, engineering, financing, legal, and more. And of course, from our GAO government states that the EPA reports that our nation's school districts are spending $6 billion annually on energy, and that 30% of this energy is being used inefficiently. What are the benefits of an energy performance contract? First and foremost, every building will become more efficient and modernized. As we know, with your capital budgets and programs, money is not infinite, it's finite. So you oftentimes have to pick and choose what is the most essential aspects of your building that need to be repaired and some of the issues that need to be replaced. So with EPCs, every building will become more efficient and modernized as a result of this methodology, which I'll go into detail later and explain. Second thing is one contract, no low bidders. So what that means is that we'll end up picking, or you'll select the ESCO who will do the work. And then after the ESCO is selected, that winning organization will pick the subcontractors on the job. And of course, you being full control of every aspect, you'll have direct impact on what subcontractors are also hired on this particular project. Third, it improves the learning environment with better lighting, better ventilation. Studies have proven that when children are in environments that are more conducive to education, their test scores go up, the attendance rates go up, and even with your staff, you'll have less of instances of people being sick and calling off sick for work. Next one is taxpayer friendly, no out-of-pocket cost or tax increase. This is a phenomenal opportunity. You will not have to raise taxes to have your buildings upgraded and repaired like in the past. Oftentimes, that especially politicians hate to raise taxes because they know they'll never be reelected. So in this situation, what occurs is that you won't pay anything out of pocket. And as a result of it, you don't have to raise taxes on your residents who are already, I'm sure, complaining that they pay more than enough in school taxes. Next, rapid implementation. No voter approval required. You don't have to go and have something placed on the election. You don't have to require a vote to take place in order for this project to move forward. You don't have to go back to the voters and get their permissions to do these particular types of projects. Next, fixed price, no change orders. I'm sure many of you have nightmares when it comes to dealing with contractors when you do capital projects. They'll give you a quote, they'll tell you what the price is, and then maybe a third of the way into the project, they're saying, oh, we didn't expect this to happen, so now we're going to have to increase the project $5 million. And you're sitting here like, how did this happen? We had an agreement. Contractors are, I'm going to say famous, they're infamous for doing this. In the middle of a project, they often increase them. So in these types of projects, the energy performance contracts, there are no change orders. Next one, guaranteed savings. What's stated in the contract is what's supposed to occur. And if it doesn't, when it comes to your debt service or actually lease payment, the ESCO who is selected will be making that payment. So in the event that the savings don't turn out the way they're supposed to, and that there's a shortfall, the ESCO is on the hook for making a payment on your lease. Last but not least, positive PR. This is an innovative solution to fund millions in green upgrades, again, without increasing your taxes. This is it right here. This chart is an illustration of an energy performance contract in terms of funding cash flow. If you look to the far left of your screen, it'll say current energy budget before an EPC. That's the blue cylinder, so to speak, or the blue square rectangle. Now, in the second one, it'll say years 1 to 25. So what happens is once the ECMs, which stands for energy conservation measures, those are things like your lighting, those are things like your HVAC systems, your temperature controls. These energy conservation measures, when implemented, what will occur is that it'll, of course, increase your cash flow. And then what occurs is that the money that you historically spent on energy will now be used for your construction costs. So that's the orange part where it says debt service payment. That amount right there is what's utilized to pay for the ECMs. So what I'm saying is, ladies and gentlemen, you'll never have to pay above and beyond what you're already spending in your energy costs. So if you're spending, say, $30 million a year in energy, you're going to continue to spend that $30 million, or actually in these cases, because our projects are all a minimum of 30% savings, cash flow. So you'll be paying on that, on the equipment. And then you see the green part at the top says cash flow. That's how much extra that you'll have that you can rededicate to other areas in your school district. And of course, after the EPC, at the blue at the bottom is your new energy budget. That's how much you'll be spending. And then the green is how much you'll get back in cash after the project's complete. Danielle, would you like to add anything or make any clarifications in terms of what I said?
Yeah, I think the one thing that I would add is that I think as a person working in a district and working with ECG, we made the decision as part of our project to self-fund a portion, utilize a portion of our dollars to invest. I think the one thing that it's important for people to understand is that you have some choices here, right? In terms of putting any upfront dollars in that you may have already committed within your capital budget, but you also have the opportunity with these projects, and I like the flexibility that's offered here, where you can utilize energy savings as a way to also fund different iterations of the project. I think the other thing that's important to stress is that this doesn't have a negative impact on your existing debt. In fact, here in Philadelphia, we've received 2 increased and improved bond ratings over the last several years, which was great news for us. But I do think that that's important, that being involved in these projects doesn't reflect negatively upon your existing debt.
Danielle, thank you for bringing that out. And that is a very critical component, because I've received calls from several people participating on this webinar, and they wanted to know, like, well, if we do this, will it have an impact on our bond rating? And I'm glad that you brought that up, and I appreciate that. And by the way, ladies and gentlemen who are participating on this call, I think it's fair for me to note that Danielle is not a consultant for ECG, nor does she work for us. That she still works for the Philadelphia School District, and we're working very closely with them on like a $185 million project currently. Energy performance contracts create jobs. This is something else that's seldom talked about, but I think is very important. For every $10 million of energy savings performance contracts, it creates 95 high-paying jobs. And this chart right here illustrates that. And you may be saying, well, what does that mean to me? What that means is this. In many of our urban environments, our urban communities, we know that the issues that we have when it comes to crime, it comes to homelessness, and many of the myriad issues that impact our urban communities are often a direct result of the lack of access to capital. And that lack of access to capital comes in many forms, but first and foremost is employment opportunities. There's a lack of employment opportunities. You know, where I'm from, in South Central Pennsylvania, what occurs oftentimes with our politicians, when there's a major project, they'll go outside the area, bring in a major contractor who then also buses in their construction workers. These types of projects create jobs and opportunities for your local business community as well. So the ESCO will come in, and you will have the ability to pick and choose what companies, meaning minority vendors, women-owned businesses, veterans, whomever you would like to bring on the project, can be brought on these projects. And what it does is impact your local economy. I can't express the importance of that, because many of these young people that graduate from our schools, they come out with a lot of hope, they come out with a lot of ambition. But what often happens is that there's nothing waiting for them in terms of employment opportunities. And that's when we create that school to prison pipeline. Creating these opportunities is a way to break that pipeline and to give these children, and as well as these adults, opportunities to make a sustainable income and grow and build their families and make strong communities. Our schools, I can't stress the value and the importance and role in our communities that your school systems play. Schools need EPCs. The U.S. Government Accountability Office did an assessment on $3.7 billion of energy projects in the federal government, throughout the federal government. They did these projects on over 500,000 facilities. And what our federal government found out, that even with all the degrees and level of education and expertise in the federal government, they lack the expertise to be able to fully execute these energy performance contracts. If you look at the second bullet, it says GAO studied energy performance contracts and recommended steps to ensure that savings cover the cost of ESPCs, including using expertise, information, and competition more efficiently or effectively. In our projects, we create competition. We just don't use RFQs, because when you think about it, an RFQ is nothing more than a beauty contest. Everyone pretty much kind of lines up. They're close to the same. If you're in this space, you pretty much kind of have the same level of expertise. But when you create a competition, that's when you have a direct impact on pricing and costs and things of that nature. So ECG, being the owner's rep, we make sure that these projects are not only a success, but we also make sure that you get everything that is being paid for. And what the federal government is essentially saying is, if you want to do these projects, you need to bring in an organization like ECG who can manage this process from beginning to end. The role of the ECG Group. What we do, we manage all the different project variables. We provide oversight of energy service companies. Those are your ESCOs. And ESCO is an organization like Johnson Control, Honeywell, Ameresco. Many of these companies are either Fortune 5s or Fortune 100 companies and are multinational conglomerates. And what we do is make sure that we protect your interests, the interests of your children, as well as the taxpayer when doing these projects. We also provide confidential consultation on all project issues from project inception until after 3 years, the project is substantially completed. So what that means is even when the project is finished, ECG will still be there holding your hand for the next 3 years after the project is finished during the M&V phase to make sure that the project is delivering as stated in the contract.
So Otto, I think it actually, I just kind of want to echo one of the things you started with when you opened this webinar, when you said that only 3 school districts that when you were presented had heard of EPCs and ESCOs and had started that work. And I know we talked about this where I said, initially I was surprised when you shared that number. And then when I thought about it upon sort of more reflection, it didn't surprise me. I think for those of us who are in the public sector and are responsible for managing public dollars, there's a significant amount of responsibility I think we all take and value and understand when you are spending public dollars and making sure that that is done wisely. I'm sure many folks on this webinar may have also heard some of the horror stories, but behind ESCO projects that did not go well, money that school districts ended up having to pay out of pocket. And I just want to sort of echo the sentiments that you spoke about in terms of the importance of having a third party that is representing your district's interests, representing your interests in this process. And I think that that was something that was particularly helpful and rewarding in our experience in Philadelphia, where I didn't feel like I needed to be an EPC expert, but that I had a partner in this process who would advise us in terms of the best way to approach this. And so I just wanted to sort of echo that piece around the importance of having an owner's rep and utilizing a third party organization like ECG to assist districts in this process.
Thanks, Daniel. And another part that they might have found attractive as well is the fact that we don't charge you up front. And that's why we always use the term all ECG services are provided with no out-of-pocket cost to the district, because our fee is baked into the project. When you look at the cost sheet of one of your capital projects, there'll be a line item that says architectural engineering. Oftentimes that line item, an ESCO or a general contractor will charge a project anywhere between 5 and 9%. Because of the role that ECG plays, we actually can play that role in the project. Therefore, we don't get paid or we don't get compensated until you have an active project. So what that means is we're actually working for you for free for at least 1.5 years. And in some cases like Philadelphia might have been 2 years, almost 3 years. And of course, with the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, it was definitely like 3 years. And organizing these things. And that shows, again, our commitment. So you don't have to think like, okay, if we need to bring ECG on, what are they going to cost us up front and how, and are they going to keep on billing us? It doesn't work that way. The way it works, if we don't get paid unless there's a contract signed with an ESCO and we're within that contract. And what happens is the ESCO is responsible for paying us to represent you. And I'll say it again, the ESCO is responsible to cover our costs to represent your interests, and is never a conflict. And we work closely with your solicitors on putting all these contracts together. There are 3 major phases to an energy performance contract. There's a preparation and planning phase, which is 1 to 2 years, the project phase, which could be 2 to 3 years, and of course, the measurement and verification phase of 3 years. Let's talk about phase 1, the preliminary energy assessment. See, ECG will perform a preliminary energy assessment of your facilities and prepare for you a written report with our findings. This survey will determine if an EPC is feasible and estimate the size and scope of work that can be performed. Identify energy service company partners, the ESCO. What happens is that ECG will prepare and issue an RFP to solicit for energy service companies. We will ensure that the RFP attracts multiple competitive and qualified proposers. in addition to include that you preferred energy savings measures. So for example, say in your one building, you're like, these are must-haves. I need a new HVAC system. We must have new lighting. We need temperature controls. Those are must-haves, and those will also be included in the RFP that goes out to ensure that the ESCOs, when they go and do the evaluation on their own, that they will be included in the proposal. Third step, get school board approval and hire the ESCO. What happens is that ECG will supervise the successful ESCO in the preparation of a comprehensive energy audit, because that must be done in order for the financing to come through. And we'll develop the final scope of work to be performed, which will produce the largest and most dependable energy savings, incorporated energy conservation, renew energy measures that are important to your agency. So we go in, we do all the work, we make sure that we work closely with the school board as well. We'll go in and educate your school board when they go into committee, when they want to discuss these issues prior to signing their contract or voting for the ratification of contract. And we'll explain every step. And we also, on your behalf, if necessary, we'll work with the media as well. We work closely with media, and we educate the media on how these projects work out of full transparency. So there's nothing that is done really behind closed doors, because we are dealing with taxpayers' money, and we're talking about, in some cases, hundreds of millions of dollars, and we want to make sure that everyone gets the best bang for their buck. I briefly touched on the comprehensive energy audit with guaranteed savings contracted. Again, the comprehensive energy audit, we work closely, of course, with the ESCOs to make sure that everything is fully developed and that the scope is delineated in terms of the work that's going to be performed. And we make sure that it produces the largest and most dependable energy savings that incorporates energy conservation measures. We apply for State Energy Act approval and secure rebates if applicable. Some states, you have to work closely with the state, and others you don't. But one thing that is true about these projects, many states do have rebates for utilization of certain products and or methodologies. Historically, ESCOs would keep the rebates. We don't allow that. There, in any aspect of what we do, all the money that comes in goes directly back to the district. So every rebate is given to the district and it's not given to ESCOs, because we've had situations where ESCOs would tell a school district, like, oh yeah, for the rebates, we keep all the rebates because, we're putting up all this work and time. No, that's not what happens. Also, another thing that ESCOs will often do is they'll say, well, if you don't do the project, you have to pay us $300,000, in some cases even higher. And those are called breakaway fees. We don't allow breakaway fees either. They do everything at their own risk, just like we do and everyone else, because we want to make sure that you get the best bang for your buck. Next piece is perform design work with state and local approvals. Of course, we go and follow through with your state governments, local governments, to make sure that the approvals are in place, and we take care of every aspect of that. And of course, last but not least, on this phase 2, we execute construction with all necessary permits, licenses, and safety measures, meaning we follow the letter of the law. There are no shortcuts, especially when we're dealing with children, families, and of course, people that we work for. ECG, we pride ourselves on our expertise. We, out of all the projects, we've done over $1 billion worth in work, and all of our projects are successful. And we continue to pride ourselves on that, because in this space, you're only as good as your last project. And phase 3, which is a measurement and a verification. We usually recommend that you do M&V for a bare minimum of like 3 years. Of course, you can extend it, which will cost more money, but it's really not necessary. In that phase, we do a deep evaluation to make sure that your buildings are performing at the highest optimal level, and that the savings are true and they're real, and we sign off and validate that, yes, these projects are delivering as stated in the contract. And of course, last but not least, shortfalls are the responsibility of the ESCO. So what happens is, if there's a shortfall and it doesn't deliver the required savings at any point, the ESCO is on the hook to make the payments, the lease payments, on your energy conservation measures. And of course, again, those are like your HVAC systems, your lighting systems, and everything else. Case study. School District of Philadelphia. And I will defer, of course, to our resident expert, COO, person in charge of everything in the Philadelphia School District. Ladies and gentlemen, Danielle Floyd.
I will correct that later, but so thanks again for allowing me to co-host with you. Really excited about sharing a little bit about the work that we did here in Philadelphia, and to just give you an honest testimonial in terms of what my experience was working on an EPC and working with an ESCO. I think one of the first things that I would just want to share with all of you is that, we made a very intentional decision to start small. We have over 300 buildings covering over 26 million square feet here in Philadelphia, but made the decision to start very small with 3 buildings in a pilot program. And what that did for us was allowed us to learn more about what an EPC is, what are ECMs, all the fun acronyms you've been hearing this afternoon or this morning. I had no idea what any of those were prior to starting this work, but it gave us the time that we needed to understand what is this process, to make sure that the procurement process that we were putting in place met the needs, met our financial needs, met our strategic needs from our board perspective. And it gave us an opportunity also to reflect on our lessons learned and apply that to future projects that we would implement here in the city. We were very explicit in our project with setting some very particular goals with regards to doing this work. And I won't get into all of them, but I do think that if any of your districts have either started or adopted sustainability plans, this is a great way and a strategy that makes sense to connect to some of your sustainability work. We are fortunate here in Philadelphia that we had our sustainability plan, a nationally recognized sustainability plan, and utilized the EPC as one way to fulfill the goals that were outlined in that plan. Certainly you've heard Otto talk a lot about capital improvements. We have over we have almost $3 billion in need in terms of infrastructure improvements here in our district. And I'm sure many of you who are tuning in can understand that challenge in wanting to renovate and upgrade facilities, but not having all of the resources in place to do so. And so we looked at this as an opportunity to not only implement improvements, but to do it in a more holistic way in terms of our approach. Certainly the benefits of lowering our operating costs. You heard Otto talk about being able to put in more efficient systems, our HVAC, our lighting systems. And so just lowering our overall energy spending and energy usage, which again connects back to some of our sustainability goals. And, working in education, I would be remiss if we didn't talk about the opportunities that this presents for students and improving the learning environments for them, as well as finding opportunities to connect, as you've heard about Otto speak, with job training, setting up apprenticeship opportunities. You have a lot of flexibility and leeway to really define the work in your district. If you choose to move forward with an EPC, there's really a lot of ways that you can positively impact your city. So just a little bit about our pilot. As I mentioned, we did 3 high schools. We made a decision very intentionally to start with some of our larger buildings, looking at ways we could lower our utilities, improve the FCI, lower the FCI score at that location. And I think what was also important was to get some quick paybacks so that we could reinvest those funds back into other buildings within our portfolio. And so some districts, they make the decision to use those energy savings to help pay down debt or to close budget gaps. We were very purposeful and intentional not to do that. We wanted to reinvest it back into our infrastructure. And so some of those special projects that you may have principals requesting that you can never quite get around to, this is an opportunity to use some of those savings to be able to get to some of those initiatives. I think the other thing that I would love to just sort of share is that this was definitely not an overnight process. And I know, Otto, you talked about this
Right.
with the 3 stages of working in an EPC. And I just want to echo that.
I made it look simple, but you know, it's a long process, right? We simplified it a little bit.
You did.
Time.
And so I just want to make sure to underscore that this is not
No.
6 months. This is not 12 months. It's not 18 months.
Right.
We finished our first pilot project. We started construction in July of 2018, but had almost a year plus of planning just to get to that point, and finished in the fall of 2019. And obviously, you know, as you're thinking about when construction has to happen, we made the decision to have that happen during off hours because learning still needed to occur, and we didn't want to disrupt the educational process in our buildings. And so it was great to be able to have some of that flexibility, given that we did not have to worry about change orders. That certainly was something that was very helpful, and that we could build that into our project costs up front. So super excited that our pilot was completed successfully. We actually have a number of GIZA projects. We're heavily into GIZA 1 and GIZA 2 now, but our first set of first 3 schools that we worked on with the pilot have been completed. Our just initial investment, just to be more specific, was about $24 million. And as you heard Otto also talk about, when we did we know that our guaranteed annual savings are almost close to $370,000. That's not insignificant, especially with districts these days continuing to have challenges just to upgrade their infrastructure. And over the entire term of the project, we're anticipating a savings of up to $8 million. So, you know, for us, this was a good decision, money well spent. Certainly having the benefit of the ECG team to get us smart about what this process is and to not be intimidated by taking the first step and trying this. And I certainly think starting small for us is what resulted and yielded a good amount of success.
And I'd just like to add that Philadelphia took more of a bifurcated approach. Many of our districts that we work with, they will have just a pure energy performance contract where they only use the savings that are generated to, you know, cover the cost of their energy conservation measures. What the Philadelphia School District did, they actually had some money already reserved for capital improvements. So what they were able to do is marry this methodology with the resources that they've already had for more of a more robust impact, to be able to have more of a impact on our entire district. So Daniel, did you want to speak to that and talk about, you know, what made you guys decide to do that approach? Because I think it's brilliant in that you actually use EPCs now as a strategy for your capital program.
Correct. Yeah, so especially with the facilities that have been identified, the previous approach that we had taken, just because we managed such a large portfolio of buildings, we could never get to everything that we wanted to do in the building. So we could do HVAC, we could upgrade the system, and then, you know, a school may have to wait 4 years for us to get to the windows, and then may have to wait another set of years to be able to get to some of the exterior improvements that needed to be done. And so, you know, being able to identify projects, schools that were already slated for investment, combining that with the comprehensive energy audit that was completed as part of the phase 1 that we talked about. And then also being able to use information that we had completed a facilities condition assessment. We had information about utilities. We had information about student enrollment and attendance, and being able to identify where we knew we could have the greatest impact, as well as being able to pinpoint and identify those things that we never would have been able to get to in the same period of time. And so now we're doing the windows with the exterior renovations, with the HVAC. And so when students and administrators and teachers walk into their building, they know that we've been able to address some of their more significant needs all at one time, rather than having to do it piecemeal. And so I think our combination of existing capital commitments and projects combined with what we were able to get from the EPC project really allowed us to be more comprehensive, intentional, and purposeful in our approach with investing in these facilities.
Danielle, could you just again touch on the fact that this doesn't have an adverse impact on the school's bond rating? Because that is something that will come up time and time again. Like, I don't understand. How can I get all this stuff? And I'm hearing that we got to make debt service payments. To me, that means it's going to hit our bottom line. So could you go through that again? Because I know.
You want me to mention again, our bond rating has gone up twice since since we participated in the ESCO projects.
Right.
So no, I definitely will reiterate and definitely say that there is no negative impact to your existing debt service in terms of how the projects are structured. And so for us, it actually allowed us to, we pay down our debt service out of operating funds. And so being able to take some of these energy savings and reinvest them in facility upgrades to help boost the existing facilities budget. That's never quite enough to do everything that you want to do. But it did not have a negative impact on our debt service payments. And we're actually very proud of the fact that our bond ratings have gone up significantly since we started these programs.
Nice. And ladies and gentlemen, I really just would also like to draw your attention to the third bullet, the third green bullet, where's the MWBE participation. You see that 62% MBE participation is unheard of in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. Our state government has never achieved it. Many of our cities have never achieved it. But the Philadelphia School District has achieved it. The projects are successful and the community is receiving a direct benefit as a result of it, not just from the benefit of our children having better schools, better learning environments, and then also increased educational opportunities as well, because they're learning about energy conservation and things of that nature, but also it's creating jobs. Again, it's creating jobs. And, you know, I'm just proud to have been a part of this particular project, and actually all the projects coming out of Philadelphia. And again, you know, thank you again, Danielle, as well as Dr. Height, for allowing us to have you right now. So we appreciate that.
You're so welcome. And I definitely think that, you know, when you think about the different audiences and the different individuals who work in districts, right? You've got board members who, you know, we want to carry out the mandate and the direction from our board members about having women-owned, minority-owned, Philadelphia-based businesses have the opportunity to participate in these opportunities. You've got that mandate from our mayor, you've got that from our city council as well. And so it made sense as a district, given that we are committed to small business development and growing our own where possible, to bring these major ESCOs to the table with some of our smaller women and minority-owned business contractors to create opportunities for them to participate in this work. And so that was definitely we held a couple of different fairs to sort of match people up and make the ESCOs aware of some of the existing capacity of our minority contractors within the city.
You know, I'm glad you brought that piece up, because yeah, I remember that. What we end up doing is hosting that fair, because oftentimes, ladies and gentlemen, in these projects or any construction project, when you have like M or WBE participation requirements, the first thing that comes from the GC or the general contractor is, we can't find anybody qualified. I just don't know where to look. And you know, so what we end up doing is putting together a fair so you can match them up and give them the opportunity, so then no one could ever say, well, I can't find any local minority businesses. And of course, you look at Philadelphia, 62%. That's unheard of. So, all right. Daniel, is there anything else you'd like to add about the project?
No, I will say again that slow is okay. Starting small is okay. And, you know, I do, again, just think that this is a very unique way to marry your sort of academic mandates and what it is that you want to accomplish for students, and just thinking about all of the things that we are wanting, the types of spaces we want to create for kids coming out of this pandemic, especially with more emphasis and thinking about ventilation and what that means, but just creating just general academic spaces that we know kids deserve, with your facilities mandates and wanting to do the building improvements that you sometimes are never able to get to because of budget constraints, with your financial outcomes and goals in terms of being able to spend limited resources and public dollars in the best way possible. And I think we were able to demonstrate all of those things in the projects we did here.
Absolutely. Thank you. This is our next case study. Some of you on the call, and actually, I think Dr. Constance Evelyn's probably on this call, and we decided to use one of her projects, of course, as a case study. And, you know, it wasn't a huge project. It was a $3.7 million project. They're saving $275,246 annually, which is substantial when you look at the project size, right? And of course, the energy service company was Honeywell, but the reduction in energy costs is phenomenal. 66% in reduction in energy consumption. That reduction translates into savings. So that savings translates into real dollars that are now can be diverted either into your capital program, like was done in Philadelphia, or you can divert it into your general fund, and then maybe it can be used for educational purposes or however your district sees fit. And of course, that was done in 2019. And just to give examples of some of the upgrades, the LED lighting, they had solar installed, modern temperature controls, air handling units, and of course, water. That's another thing that we also address too, water consumption, because in many districts, you know, the water bill can kill you. So we make upgrades. We look at every system in your district. But not only that, these projects also have the ability to fund increased security for your buildings, in addition to even fuel efficient vehicles. So some of you may provide your own transportation. I know in the Northeast, it's often subcontracted, but I've also seen in other districts throughout our nation where they own their own buses, their own fleet, and they manage that component. But this is something that also, this type of methodology can also be used for the purchase of fuel efficient vehicles as well. And of course, if any of you know Dr. Constance, we can also, even if you don't, I can make the introduction, and please feel free to call Dr. Constance Evelyn anytime you'd like and ask her about the project, how she felt, and I'm sure Danielle will be available as well. Connie's probably more available now because she's retired from what I've recently learned. But you know, Danielle right now is stuck with dealing with logistics issues for transportation. She's still managing projects over here. You know, this woman is a dynamo. She does it all. So next case study. Newburgh. Okay, this one was a $28 million project. As you see, the projected energy savings annually, ladies and gentlemen, they're saving $1.2 million annually. That's substantial. That's Dr. Roberto Padilla. And I tell you, he was blown away. He was very skeptical for the longest. And then once he actually did the project, he's seeing the savings, which is real. You know, at this point, he's like, man, we need to just continue to move forward and to promote and ensure that other districts are aware of this very real opportunity. And the ESCO that actually conducted the work was Johnson Controls. There was a reduction in energy costs of 60%. So that 60% realized 1.29 million. Do you realize by not doing these projects, that money would have gone to your energy companies? So what we're doing now is not going to your energy companies, it's going into your coffers, in addition to the fact that now you have a whole lot of different new stuff in your buildings. I know some of you are probably saying, well, Banks, come on, this is too good to be true. It's really not. It's real and it's tangible, and all these superintendents are available, and we can make sure that you can talk to them one-on-one and have that discussion. And I'll be happy, of course, to come to all of your districts, sit down, go over this with you again, if need be. In addition to, we want to do a preliminary energy assessment, because that's going to be the written report with our findings. We're going to look at your facilities. We're going to, if you have a facility assessment report, we're going to look at that. We're going to look at your utility bills. We're going to look at your building square footage as well as your enrollment data. And we're going to provide you a document that you can use that's going to help you make the right decision moving forward. Even if you choose not to move forward, you still have this excellent document that you're going to need anyway. In the examples, the examples that we did in that building were, lighting upgrades, things of that nature, boiler upgrades, digital control systems, and window replacements. And of course, LED lighting is like, you can save a ton of money just by, changing your lighting as well. So next one, I apologize. Now, ESSER funding. This is something that was a big topic of discussion at the conference that I attended. Everyone's trying to figure out, like, how can we use our ESSER funding? What's the best way to maximize the utility of it? In addition to that, we all know that it's time stamped. So you have to figure out, like, okay, what are we going to do with it? Put everything together and move forward. So the COVID-19 relief funds can be used as part of facility upgrades, enabling energy savings to be used for other projects. So HVAC has a direct relationship to airborne illness and qualifies as a COVID-19 related improvement. So we are experts in handling elementary and secondary school emergency relief funds. We will track your deadlines. We are advised on fund allocation. We'll prepare the legal details and we'll manage the grants. So what we'll end up doing is what can be covered by ESSER. We're essentially using like a Philadelphia school district model. So now what you're doing is using your ESSER funds to take care of what is legally permissible, and then the other areas of your schools that need upgraded, we'll try to use the EPC methodology to address those issues or those deficits in your school district as well. And we're more than happy to sit down with you and work with you on that. So that's the ESSER funding piece. Now, the value of the ECG group, to just recap: no fees to the district. You do not have to pay us a retainer. You do not pay us quarterly, monthly, or anything. The only way ECG is compensated if there's a contract, and again, we're paid for essentially out of the savings that are generated from the project as well, from the ESCO. Where it says ECG's core focus, that's you as the customer. Again, we're only as good as our last project, and we want to make sure that every project is successful. So our core focus is on making you happy. So we're customer focused first. And again, there's no risk safety net. There's no risk to you. You're going to win. Regardless, you're going to win. The project doesn't perform the way that it should, you still win because the ESCO has to pay for it. Your tax is not going to have an adverse impact, as Danielle alluded to, on your bond rating. In Philadelphia's case, it went up. So there's no risk to this. The safety net is built into the contract. We're a trusted, proven partner. As previously stated, we've done over billions of dollars in these EPC projects, and there are a myriad. There are many superintendents throughout our nation that can speak to the success of our projects and our track record of success. STEM scholarship, that's another thing. We provide scholarship money for children who are interested in the science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. So we provide scholarships to your students to be able to go on to secondary education. We have student engagement programs, of course, that the children also learn about engineering and the impact of ECMs will have on the district. And last but not least, of course, we are certified women-owned business. And we pride ourselves on our diversity and inclusion. There's nothing that we do that we don't take into consideration the environments or the community that we serve. So next steps, contact the ECG group and get started with your no obligation preliminary energy assessment. Of course, my name is Von Banks. Of course, my telephone number is area code 717-712-5080. And of course, my email, autobanks@theecggroup.com. So please call me, make sure you reach out to do this PEA. Again, there's no risk, no obligation, and you do it, you're going to be able to see for yourself how much can be saved. Thank you. Any questions?
Yeah, a couple of questions came in during the presentation, but please, if anyone else has any question, please feel free to click the little Q&A bubble and send it on in. One question that came in, Vaughn, was if you're going to start an EPC, what materials do you need to pull together?
We need if you have one, a facility assessment condition report. That's important. We need your utility bills. We also need to know the number of buildings that you have and the square footage of those buildings. And we also need to know like the number of students that you have that occupy those buildings, because believe it or not, that has an impact on calculations, because human beings give off body heat and energy. So because of that, you know, there are calculations that must take place in order to keep, a nice climate and environment. So those are really the preliminary things that are needed for these types of assessments. And again, there's no cost, no obligation.
And I would say, also for districts that are thinking about or considering this or wanting to know more, how much, I would say just with our team, while this was an effort in a project that was led from the Capital Projects Office, how many different departments we had involved in this work, and how important it is for you all to be aligned internally and understand what this is. So just with our team, we had the Capital Projects Office, our Facilities Office, our Maintenance Office, our Chief Financial Officer and Budget team, certainly our superintendent representatives from our Superintendent's Office. We actually included our academic team because, as you heard before, it was really important for us to make sure that there was an intentional and explicit connection to what was happening around student learning. And we also needed to involve our procurement office and our small business office to establish our diversity goals. And so when we started our procurement process and the ESCOs came in for their interviews, we were well represented across the board in terms of all of the different departments that are involved. And so depending on how your district is organized, as much as this may sit and on the operational side, I think it's also important to know and understand, and I would strongly recommend making sure your partners and colleagues in academics and finance are also brought into the conversations early, especially when you need to make the case for your board that you all are aligned on what the strategic goals and desired outcomes are as well.
Thank you, Daniel. That was an excellent point. And of course, we how could you forget the one critical component, the lawyers, right? We can't do anything without lawyers. So yes, ladies and gentlemen, you got to have your solicitors there. And I'm telling you, Philadelphia has a ton of lawyers. And
those are the best contracts ever to have.
Exactly, because and that's that's an important component, because we talk about energy performance contract. So the contract must be tightly written. So we actually work closely with the lawyers in the district, and we provided technical expertise, and we know how to write and draft the contracts as well. So we do that and assist the solicitor's office. So there were a ton of lawyers involved, and it's successful. I mean, what can I say? It's like it's truly a pleasure to work with you in the Philadelphia School District and all that we've been able to accomplish for the kids in the community. Just amazing.
We just have a few minutes left, about 5 minutes total. So we have a couple more questions. Again, feel free to send in any more. Somebody asked, what is GESA? That person is clearly not from Pennsylvania.
I'm glad you brought that up. I'm sorry. GESA stands for Guaranteed Energy Savings Act. It is a state law here in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania that allows our school districts and government institutions to be able to be engaged in these types of projects. Every state has a different name, because when you look at it from the legislative process, the legislation it serves as the catalyst or the action and makes it legal for these programs or projects to move forward. So GESA is the acronym for Guaranteed Energy Savings Act, and that is the Pennsylvania program.
Great. Another question is, what role does the district have in the long-term upkeep or training?
That's an excellent question. The district, what happens is that when we do these projects, we make sure that we use open-ended protocols. And what that means is that we don't, like say the district selects Johnson Control. We don't allow Johnson Control to use their proprietary technologies in these buildings. They must be open for anyone to be able to come in and work on them. So that's the first part that's important to note. Also, it can be written into the contract that the district personnel will be trained on the upkeep and maintenance of the new systems that are installed. Also, an option is that the district may say, well, we really don't want to have to maintain it on our own. Then we can build in a maintenance contract into the EPC contract itself. Danielle, do you want to, do you remember, or do you feel free to touch on what Philadelphia decided to do when it comes to doing their M&V phases and what they preferred? Because I know, Philadelphia is a large district and you have the expertise, but some of the smaller districts don't. So.
Sure, I definitely know that it's for the pilot specifically, we chose a longer M&V term, the measurement and verification process. We did ask for, as part of our pilot opportunity for our facility staff and our maintenance staff to be trained and to receive training, because it is important that once all of these improvements are installed, in order for you to achieve the savings, they have to operate the way that they were designed and set up. And so when you think about your building operators, making sure that it was important that they understood how these systems were established, and particularly in our district, especially understanding people can change in the building every year, right? And so part of this was making sure that the ESCOs were able to maintain these improvements. I can't remember the specific period of time, but we did specify that in the RFP. However, we also did include and require training for our maintenance staff. So if we wanted the ability long-term to be able to address these systems should they need to be repaired or repair was required. And at the same time, build up the skills of our workers, right? And so being able to expose them and educate them and get them trained on more modern systems was also a benefit that we wanted to be able to offer our existing employees. And so we did a little bit of a combination to be able to make sure that all of the savings that we could achieve were implemented, and that the reason that we didn't get there is because of operator error.
Right. All right.
Excellent. Well, we're just at time. So again, I want to thank Danielle Floyd with Philadelphia School District and our own Von Banks for your time today and for this great explanation. For all of you who attended, we will be sending around this presentation. Please share with all your friends. And if you know of anyone else who might be interested, we're happy to forward that link on to them as well. So I put Otto's contact, Von's contact right back up there. So feel free to jot that down, and we certainly hope to hear from you all. Right. Thank you again.
Danielle, any last words?
No, just want to say thank you again for allowing us to share our story. And I don't know, you've made yourself available, and if anyone has questions, and we're happy to talk about our experience. We will be very honest about what our experience has been in this, which has been nothing but pleasant. But thank you for allowing me to join you today. It was a pleasure.
Thank you, Danielle. And hey, ladies and gentlemen, now you know what an EPC is. You know what ECG does. Look, all these acronyms, right? And you know what an ESCO is. So now, in parting, I'll just say, yesterday, you're knowledgeable now. So yesterday was history. Tomorrow is a mystery, but there's no greater gift than today. That's why we call it the present. So make sure today you contact me and set up for your free preliminary energy assessment. Take care, everyone. And thank you so much, Danielle, ECG home team. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.